13 days. Just 13 days. That's all it took in 1971 for one of the most decisive military victories of the 20th century. Now, we often focus on the ground troops, the naval blockades, but the real story, the thing that made this incredibly swift victory even possible, was fought and won in a completely different domain. We're going to explore how this war was truly won from above.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This right here is a pretty stark admission, and it comes directly from the other side, a major general in the Pakistan Army. It just perfectly captures the whole theme of what we're talking about today, the absolute, overwhelming dominance of the Indian Air Force. You see, this wasn't just a factor in the war. It was the very foundation the entire victory was built on.
So how'd they pull it off? Well, the IAF strategy started with one single, non-negotiable goal. Before a single tank could roll forward, before any ship could set up a blockade, the war had to be won in the air. This wasn't about flashy dogfights for glory. This was about methodically, strategically creating the perfect conditions for the entire military to succeed.
Now, the official military term for this is achieving a favorable air situation, or FAS. The easiest way to think about it is like creating a giant protective umbrella over the entire battlefield. The IAF's first job was to make sure its own planes could fly wherever they needed to, whenever they needed to, and to make sure the Army and Navy down below didn't have to constantly worry about getting hit from the sky. It's really the critical first move in the chess game of modern war.
And the sheer scale of this effort, it was immense. I mean, look at this. Out of more than 4,500 missions flown out west, nearly half, almost 46% were dedicated purely to air defense. That's the work of putting up that umbrella. And it's that control of the sky that directly enabled the next huge part of the mission, devoting another 41% of their flights to directly helping the Army on the ground.
So what was the result of all that intense focus? Just astonishing speed. By the evening of December 4th, get this, only one full day after Pakistan's first strikes, the IAF had effectively won the battle for the skies on the Western Front. The Pakistan Air Force just couldn't mount an effective fight anymore. This super early victory was the key that unlocked everything else that followed.
Okay, so with the skies now secure, the IAF could pivot to the Army's most terrifying problem, stopping a literal tide of steel. We're about to see how controlling the air translated directly into blunting these massive armored assaults on the ground.
And nothing illustrates this better than the legendary Battle of Longawala. On the ground, the situation was beyond dire. You had a single company of about 120 Indian soldiers standing in the path of an entire armored brigade. We're talking over 2,000 Pakistani troops and more than 40 tanks. The odds were, well, they weren't just bad, they were completely impossible.
So you have to ask yourself, how could a tiny, isolated outpost possibly survive an onslaught like that? On paper, it's a guaranteed wipeout, a total defeat. But the battlefield wasn't just on the ground, was it?
The answer is this number right here, 37. As dawn broke, IAF hunter jets just appeared over the desert. And with no Pakistani air cover to challenge them, they had a free run. They systematically picked off and destroyed or crippled 37 Pakistani tanks. They completely shattered the assault. A certain defeat was turned into an iconic victory, not just by the brave soldiers on the ground, but by the pilots flying cover above them.
And this translated SOS message from the Pakistani forces stuck at Longwala, it just captures the pure impact perfectly. You can feel the desperation in the words. The enemy Air Force has made our life miserable. This isn't some historian's analysis years later. This is a raw, first-hand account of just how unbelievably devastating unchallenged air power can be.
You know, Longawala wasn't some isolated fluke. It was really a symptom of a much larger reality. The IAF flew over 3.5 times more ground support missions than the PAF did. What that meant on the ground is that Indian troops could advance with a shield from above, while Pakistani troops were often left completely exposed and vulnerable.
But here's where the IAF strategy gets even more interesting. It went so much deeper. Beyond winning the skies and supporting the troops, they were fighting a third, parallel war, a really innovative economic campaign designed to paralyze Pakistan's ability to even wage the conflict in the first place.
It was called the Target System Concept of Operations, or CONOPS. And the idea was just brilliant. Don't just destroy tanks and planes. Go after the things that allow an army to function at all. Go after the energy, the fuel, the powers the machines, and the transportation networks that supply the front lines. The logic was this simple three-step cascade. First, you hit the energy systems, oil depots, refineries, gas plants. No fuel means no fight. Second,
You hit the transportation systems, railways, bridges, trains. No movement means no supplies. And the result? You cripple logistics and you literally starve the enemy's war machine into submission.
And the results of this were absolutely devastating. The Karachi oil tanks? They burned for 4 straight days. The Ataq refinery's production was wiped out for an entire year. The Sui gas plant was crippled for months. And the rail system? Just savaged. This wasn't just tactical damage. This was a strategic paralysis that made fighting a long war completely impossible for Pakistan.
Now, beyond these huge strategic moves, the IAF was also this incredibly versatile workhorse, performing dozens of other missions that were absolutely vital to the war effort, even if they didn't always grab the headlines.
I mean, they were using these big, lumbering transport planes as highly effective night bombers. They modified fighters to fly crucial recon missions. They airlifted thousands of troops, evacuated over 800 casualties, and even flew almost 100 missions just to support the Navy. It just shows you the incredible depth and flexibility of the entire force.
So let's bring all of these different threads together, right? This wasn't just one single strategy. It was a whole series of interconnected layers, each one building on the other, that created this cascade of effects, leading to that swift 13-day victory.
Ultimately, it was this multi-layered approach that was just so decisive, by first achieving air superiority, then using it to dominate the battlefield, and all the while crippling Pakistan's ability to fight from the inside out. The IAF prevented what could have easily become a bloody, long, drawn-out stalemate.
Just as the official historian S.N. Prasad concluded, a longer war would have probably been a disaster for Pakistan. And why? Largely because its fuel and ammo reserves were being systematically taken out from the air. The IAF wasn't just winning battles, it was literally winning the war against the clock.
And that brings us full circle, back to another quote from the Pakistani command. Lieutenant General Niazi himself admitted that without India's strategic advantages, and chief among them was the mastery of the air, the result could have simply been a military stalemate. The air war is what turned that potential stalemate into such a definitive victory.
So this brings us to a final, bigger question. The 1971 war is this really powerful case study that forces us to think about conflict even today. In our era of advanced technology, how much of a nation's fate, its actual ability to win or lose a war, truly rests on its power in the air? The lesson from 1971 seems to suggest the answer is, well, almost everything.